You haven't had enough fun yet, Elizabeth. You're going to come back now and make
Never say listening again.
report to us on our housing office goals and accomplishments. And again, Elizabeth is housing and community development manager. So she's exercising a dual role tonight. Okay. I think with city manager process-wise, we'll go straight to it.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. I'd also like to introduce Marin Muvimo. She's the administrative analyst for the housing office and runs the CDBG program, and we're going to co-present and co-answer questions. We are providing an overview of the housing programs office. Covers affordable housing and community needs. So we're going to cover what are the city housing programs, what sort of participation do we have in a regional collaboration, what have been our accomplishments over the past year, and what are our goals for upcoming year. And our housing office does have a mission, and that's to develop and administer a variety of programs that implement city housing policies that seek to enhance affordable housing opportunities and fulfill community service needs for special needs populations, and that would include low, moderate, and workforce income households, disabled persons, senior citizens, persons at risk of homelessness, as well as others. So the housing office programs seeks to build and maintain affordable housing, administer public service grants, and administer rehabilitation grants and loans. So we're going to cover those three main areas. The funding sources, there's very little general fund dollars that go into these programs. It's mostly covered by community development block grant, annual entitlements. Recently, you did approve our annual action plan, which sets out how we're going to spend that entitlement for the program year 18-19. We also get dollars through investments from the redevelopment years, which are over now, but we still have property that continues to generate income for the city that we can spend on our special needs population. We also get home funds from the state, and we have a rental housing complex that's 100% affordable thanks to those funds. We do have a pretty impressive affordable housing inventory, over 550 affordable units that are a mix of ownership and rentals. And most of those do have deed restrictions that last forever. Some of them that were approved earlier, 30 to 50 years ago, they do expire, they do come up on the market and are vulnerable to being lost. We do try to poise, the city tries to poise itself to purchase those and put it back on the market, re-restricting them as affordable in perpetuity, and we're quite successful in doing those. We do have a couple of brand new affordable housing projects that we're very excited about. The senior housing project just up here on Van Buren is 18 units for extremely low, very low, and low income seniors. And the Monterey Hotel Apartments, 18 affordable to very low, and medium income. A couple of the policy tools that we have in the general plan and our zoning ordinance. We were talking about our inclusionary ordinance earlier this afternoon, but our housing element that we update quite often really look at our policies and what we can do to improve our ordinances and our zoning to make sure we make it easy enough. I mean, water is a constraint. We have to identify all the constraints in the housing element, but we should make it possible for these units to get built to address the housing crisis statewide. Our inclusionary housing program requires 20% development of 5 units or more to be deed restricted for affordable. We have our density bonus ordinance that we offer to any housing development that can provide more affordable housing. They get additional density, they get additional units. They could also apply for other incentives, parking, things like that. Our accessory dwelling ordinance was recently adopted. That was actually a requirement by the state law to allow accessory dwelling. Sorry for the typo, distracting. But just they're affordable by design. They're small units, they could be rented to students and workforce. So that really does help to add to our affordable inventory. Also, through enforcement of our short-term rental ban, we continue to monitor and make sure rental units are on the long-term rental market and not the short-term rental market. Marianne will take over and talk about the CDBG program.
Right, so as Lisa said, the City of Monterey receives Community Development Block Grant funds from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. So we have a couple major project categories that fall under CDBG. The first one is our Public Service Grant Program. We distribute about $137,000 annually to local nonprofits who provide community services to the citizens of Monterey. We serve about 1,500 people a year, and we focus on low-income and disadvantaged populations. Our other major project category is our infrastructure projects. So we're allowed to use CDBG funds for capital improvements in nonprofit facilities and for the public projects. Also, we have to use those for low-income populations or low-income target areas. So right there you can see there's a breakdown of our public service grant program. You can see all the different agencies we fund and the amounts they receive. This year we're working with 10 different local nonprofits, and they're all listed right there. A new recipient this year is the Gathering for Women, so we're excited to be working with them.
I just want to add that this variety of public service agencies, and it's more detailed in your agenda report, but if you look at all the different services that all these agencies provide, it really meets a lot of the goals in our 5-year consolidated plan, which is what HUD requires us to update every 5 years to set goals that are consistent with HUD funding to make sure we are funding the realm of public services and fulfilling the needs of our population.
So our other major project categories are housing preservation programs. We spend about $400,000 annually on this area. It's comprised of a few different activities. The major ones are the rehab grants and loans to low-income individuals, specifically seniors and persons with disabilities, and we help them make health and safety repairs to keep them in their homes. The other major activity is acquisition and rehab of ownership units to first-time low-income homebuyers. So this is the program where we purchase deed-restricted units in order to preserve them. Oftentimes they require repair work, so the city will take care of that, and then we turn around and resell it to low-income first-time homebuyers.
Including, you just heard from the gentleman, Jason, who got the 20-year Burgoyne unit. And that was the one that was expiring. The city purchased it, did a huge rehab that was all through CDBG dollars.
Yeah, it was like $150,000 rehab.
And we went to our list of that we continually get from low-income first-time home buyers, and Jason was
he was very excited. So a major component of our program is regional collaboration. The City of Monterey supports the Coalition of Homeless Service Providers. We help staff the Leadership Council and their efforts for the Leave Me Home 10-year plan to end homelessness. We also staff the subcommittee, which is the Housing Pipeline Committee. Another major regional project is the regional assessment of fair housing. This is a fair housing study required by HUD. Right now we're collaborating with the County of Monterey, the cities of Salinas, Seaside, and the Housing Authority. We are working with a consultant to do public outreach, and we just finished that earlier this summer. So we did some public forums, we did a public survey, and right now we're reviewing the results from those efforts and compiling them into a report that should be available later this year. And we also have a number of policies and projects that support the regional efforts, including the 2015 Safe Parking Ordinance, the 2017 adoption of emergency shelter overlay district, and right now we're currently working on the warming shelter project, which is to identify various locations for a temporary shelter on the peninsula. So the CDBG program requires a year-end report to HUD. It's called the Consolidated Annual Performance and Evaluation Report. We're currently working on that right now. There's a draft for public review that's available on the city's website, and there's a public hearing scheduled for September 4th. That report details all of the financials from the previous year, as well as reports on the progress towards the city's strategic goals. And currently, this grant cycle, we're working on implementing the 2018 projects. And then in 2019, our big project will be to update the con plan for 2020-2025. Okay, that concludes our presentation. Thank you.
And I wanted to point out our housing services webpage has all this information and more. And we continue to strive to update it. We're trying to keep updated with a lot of the things going on regionally as well as in our city. And also, our phone lines are very busy, but people to call us and contact us and just find out how we can help.
Okay, that's good. I don't know, I think you should really talk about your housing program snapshot, which is online as well.
Right, yeah, so
Want to tell the folks what that is?
that's a little flyer with a snapshot of all of our accomplishments from the previous year. We try to put one of those out as we're reviewing our year-end progress, so there is one of those on the website right now.
Right, and that contains a lot of what you said, not all of it. So
Great,
folks
much
who-
more detail about the actual accomplishments.
Right. So folks,
Thank you.
And so if folks want to get a summary of what you've seen, then you can do that right online, okay? All right. We'll do questions.
So I think it would be helpful for the public to hear, let's say I want to be like Jason, I would like to purchase a deed restricted affordable home. What are sort of the parameters for that, and how would one go about that? And then second of all, what if somebody is looking to rent it, an affordable unit? So I think it would be helpful for the public to hear what that process is, where they would go, and where they would get the information they need.
Right, so if you're interested in participating in the homeownership program, you could get an application online or just come into our office and we'll help print one out for you. But they are available online on our website there. The criteria, there's a lot of information that you have to read to review, but mostly that you income qualify. So you have to be low or moderate income. There's various properties, so some are low income, some are moderate income. It just kind of depends on what comes up on the list. And you have to be a first-time home owner, so you can't have owned before. And then for renting, the city doesn't have a renting program, but what we do have is a list of property management companies that have affordable units in their complexes. And we help distribute that information to the public and whoever's interested. There is a list on our website, and it's broken down by low income units, moderate income units, and senior units.
Yes, Councilmember Ed.
Thank you very much, good information. Going back to 2 of the 3, you listed the local nonprofits, and it's great to see. I know that reaches a lot of people locally and resonates with all of us. The next category was the infrastructure projects, and that was $350,000 listed plus for public and nonprofit facilities and capital improvements serving low-income population. So talk to me a little bit more about what's the time frame. So we have the income, and I know HUD has specific rules about how it can be spent and how long we have to hold that. So what is the balance now, and what are the constraints on when we get that, how we use that 350 on infrastructure projects per HUD rules?
Sure, so you're right, there are a lot of restrictions that HUD imposes on us for spending this money in a certain amount of time. The goal is to spend the money in the current grant year, and the grant year runs with our fiscal year, so July 1 to June 30th. For the construction projects, they need to be substantially completed by April because the city has to pass the timeliness test. That takes place in May. And that's just kind of wanting to make sure we're spending the majority of our funds in time for the end of the close of the year. In order to receive funds for that program, nonprofits participate in a notice of funding availability that happens. The whole process starts in the winter the year before. So that's kind of the application process, technical workshops that kind of walk them through the criteria for the construction projects. And then we receive their applications, review them for eligibility, take them to the planning commission, and then they come to you eventually for approval. And then as soon as we finish environmental and the funding agreements in the beginning of the next grant year, then they can pretty much take off and start implementing their projects.
Okay, so there's really no ability to bank that money and save that money year in, year after. It has to be, really it's a pass-through where we're taking it and we have specific guidelines where we have to spend that money by certain dates. So it's
Right.
not anything that we can stack and save.
For the most part, you have to spend it the year that you get it.
Yeah.
But there are certain circumstances in which a 2-year or multiple-year project could be approved through HUD. That would require a little bit more planning and special approvals through the system, but it's definitely not possible. And if a project presented itself that would be a good fit for that, then we would certainly take a look at that.
And Lynn, can you just expand a little bit about some of the memorable infrastructure projects that either this year or last year that we worked on? Because I think you'll remember them, and they've made a tremendous difference in addressing a very specific housing needs. So maybe you could share
Yeah.
a couple projects.
So a few big ones recently that we finished this last grant year, 2017, was the VTC Monterey Quad, which was a transitional housing complex in Fort Worth for veterans, homeless veterans and their families. Another one was,
These were 18 units.
yes, correct. That's 4 units.
Pardon?
It's a Monterey Quad, so quad has 18 units. And then we helped Community Human Services work on their Safe Place renovation, which is their youth shelter. So they're trying to get all of the things that they need to get their occupancy permit there. Interim, we helped fund, we spent like $220,000 on their short-term crisis care facility here in the peninsula called Manzanita Monterey, which just opened. We did a roof replacement project for Kearns Pool, which provides services, aquatic therapy to disabled individuals. There's a whole bunch of different types of projects. We did a city project at Montecito Park. We helped with NIP funded, and that's in a low-income target area. So.
Good. And the real quick question, the next one was the $400,000 on the housing preservation. So that one again is annual or biannual?
That's another annual. All these projects are annual, so that is usually the budget that we have. It's around $400,000. Sometimes it's a little more, sometimes it's a little less, depending on what program income we receive to be able to spend that. We spend usually a little over $110,000 on the rehab grants and loans, although last year we did all grants. And then for the acquisition and rehab program, it just kind of depends what properties come up and how much work they need. The one that we just did, as you know, I've been sitting vacant for a little while and it needed a lot of work. So that was a big chunk, but then this coming year we have a unit that's that we're going to be rehabbing, and it's like $40,000 rehab, so not obviously as bad as the one before, and it just depends on what comes up.
Case by case.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, If you can keep that slide on about the preservation program. I remember many years ago, the city used to grant small loans, low interest for first-time buyers many years ago.
Right, so I think you're referring to the down payment assistance program, and that still is a program in our office. We didn't do a down payment assistance loan last year. We're looking to update the program and partner probably with the Housing Authority or some agency like that to help us review all the income qualifications that we would have to look into. But that is another option. I think the other reason that one was on hold was because we were possibly trying to get information on using that money for a different home grant. So that's through the state, and we were possibly trying to use that money, looking to see how we could use that for rental assistance. So that's the other reason why we didn't do any DPA loans last year.
The reason I bring that up as a question is that how many of those loans are still out there, number one? And how many, what's the figure on getting, or how many of those people who we've helped over the last 10 or 15, 20 years don't have homes because of that loan?
There's quite a few. I don't know off the top of my head. I have to get back to you, but I want to say at least maybe a dozen.
At least.
Yeah, I mean, I want to say 15, like, yeah, okay, so a little bit more than that. So there's a good handful of people, and that's a great program. You know, it does help people buy homes. It also helps replenish our program later on, you know, when they're ready to repay those, so it's a win-win.
What's the outstanding loan balance?
It's like,
Around 7 million.
yeah, 7 to 10. And that's not just DPA, it's other loans, but yeah, it's a big chunk.
So that's about $10 million. The gentleman, or, well, maybe phrase it, if you buy a home, like a deed restricted unit, down payment is $1,600. And for that you own your home and you qualify for a loan and you pay the loan for 30 years. The down payment is sometimes even hard to make for some of our folks that are purchasing homes. $1,600 is a lot of money. And if that happens, we work very hard to find the $1,600 as well.
I just remember a few folks that could afford homes or couldn't afford homes on the peninsula used that service, and it really helped them get into their first buying homes.
Okay. Thanks for your report, and again, folks can take a look at Monterey Housing online and learn more. What we're going to do is we're going to take a little break, and because we really want to hear from people. I know you have a lot of great ideas, and we're really anxious to hear from the public, so we'll just take a little break first. We'll be back in 5. Well, it was pretty obvious that we needed a little break, and I always enjoy how we all get to interact and enjoy each other's company. So welcome back. We're going to open the discussion. We answer some questions if we can and listen to your input on the housing office goals and accomplishments. Well, I know we've heard from a lot of you and have a lot of great ideas, so please come forth and share with us what you are thinking about. You can either sit or stand at the podium. Come on, folks.
Hello, my name is Marjorie Rocha. I'm the Executive Director of Echo Housing, one of the organizations on that list of public services. And this is the counselor for Monterey County, Emily Garnica. We appreciate the support that we've received from the city. And I just want to give you a little bit of background about Echo Housing. Echo Housing has a 53-year history of providing housing counseling services to the Bay Area. As a HUD-approved housing counseling agency, we provide first-time homebuyer education, pre-purchase counseling, tenant-based rental assistance, and fair housing and tenant landlord services. In addition, we are program administrators and rent review officers for 5 Bay Area jurisdictions. We provide fair housing and tenant landlord services for the city of Monterey out of all those services that I mentioned. As a qualified fair housing enforcement organization, we provide counseling, investigation, and testing regarding race, the presence of children, disability, age, sexual harassment, national origin, religion, sexual orientation, source of income, gender identity, genetic identification, and arbitrary discrimination. Our tenant landlord services program provides counseling and mediation to tenants and landlords regarding their rights and responsibilities, such as evictions, harassment, retaliation, illegal entry, illegal rent increases, repairs and habitability, and rental contracts and leases. Emily is going to talk a little bit about the work she does. So I give you Emily.
Okay.
Good evening, my name is Emily Garnica. Again, I am the housing counselor for the Monterey County. Just to go off the base of what Marjorie just mentioned, all the information that comes through myself and through all our other counselors are completely confidential. So we encourage all citizens of the city of Monterey who have questions or concerning issues regarding renting or being a renter to call us so that we can help you the best way that we can. Again, we aren't attorneys, but we do provide mediation services. As the housing counselor for the Monterey County, I have successfully, since my time with ECHO, I have successfully mediated cases in the city of Monterey on repairs and habitability issues, as well as eviction and fair housing issues, without the tenant or the landlord having to go to court. I am available by phone, email, or one-on-one meeting. I am at the housing programs office here in Monterey on Mondays and Tuesdays, and sometimes Wednesdays. But my contact information is on the city website under the housing page. Again, if you need to reach me by phone, my number is 831-566-0824. I'll say that again, 831-566-0824. And we encourage our citizens of the city of Monterey to give us a call if they have any concerning issues. Thank you.
Thank you, that's really good information. Thanks for all that you do. Appreciate it. No one else wants to speak tonight? You're all here, you all must be disc golfers and you're here for solar panels.
You guys are going to speak, right? Somebody's speaking besides just me, for God's sakes. You guys are tired of hearing from me.
Did you bring your frisbee with you?
I have a couple of just,
Anyway, this is Esther Malkin.
sorry, by now I figure you guys.
Everybody knows you.
So based on what we were just watching in the presentation, which first and foremost, I want to thank everybody on the council and Kim. I have met with every single one of you guys and Kim and Hans, and you have been very, very, receptive and positive about helping us on this issue, and getting it on the agenda tonight is the first step to hopefully make things start really moving forward on this, because I feel like it's been kind of in the background for a while. So in particular, I want to thank Dan, Albert, and Hans, because they are working on putting together a group that we've asked them to of property managers, landlords, and different parties that are involved in this issue, whether from a renter perspective or a landlord or property management, so that everybody can come to the table and be in a position of trying to find solutions and not just, complain about it. So one of the questions I have kind of relate a little bit to the previous comment I made about the planning commission. We've got density bonuses, we've got this bonus, we've got that bonus, but the planning commission denies them, the projects. So what good is it to have these bonuses when we have developers that are being, no, we are not going to add a third level to your multi-use building because we don't want it a block away from my backyard. So this is directly related to what I said to you guys before. You have to be ready to override the planning commission's recommendations when it comes to things like this. That is a big problem that we have on moving things forward. Another question I have is, we keep talking about low income, moderate income. I don't know how often these numbers are revisited. I was just asking the housing people, and they're, I think, in the process of doing that now. But just to give you an example, San Francisco just redid theirs, and over there it's $117,000 for a family of 4 to be considered low income. I guarantee you that our numbers are not up to date, and I think it's really important before we move forward on anything to get those numbers up to date. Also, we're talking a lot about inclusionary housing in terms of purchasing properties and, being homeowners. But I don't see a whole lot of conversation going on about renters. We need renters to be considered by the city in the same capacity as potential homeowners. Because there's the bigger population here are renters, they're not homeowners. And we've got about 80% of our workforce is commuting because of this. So the people that are complaining about traffic, that's my comment to them. If you want to ease your traffic, get some more housing for the workforce. Because the workforce is consistently ignored. All these programs are great for people who are looking to buy, but what about the people who are renting? I think that's it.
Okay, Esther, thank you. Yeah, I want to say, I'll be taking a look. I followed the planning commission minutes and meetings carefully, so I'll find out what kind of projects you're talking about. Oh, welcome back.
Mayor, council members, Matt Huerta, Housing Program Manager with the Monterey Bay Economic Partnership.
All right.
And I'm really pleased that the council's moving forward with getting some more ideas, trying to put together hopefully a robust housing agenda. I get really excited when the some of our 17 different local governments across the 3-county region that we're trying to track really take it on in terms of moving the pendulum forward. We have a crisis, just crisis. It's in the news every day. It's plays out in our streets. It's here. Let's do something about it. No more talking. Let's figure out where the goals are, targets are, and plan. Let's take some action together. We want to help with that. We have amazing nonprofit leaders in town. You have amazing residents that want to help. It takes a lot of courage from everybody, and especially you find people up here. MBEP's thing is about supply. It's not just any supply. We want supply that addresses your needs, your community's needs. You have a housing element that says, at least getting a D means 650. You guys decided that, or those numbers were provided by the state and all these different estimates, but we have a number to shoot for, and you're chipping away at that. But concerted effort needs to be done on a policy level and a project level to get there. And so when we do see projects that come forward, it was stated earlier, if they make sense, we have to figure out how to get it done. And making sense means if it's near job centers, if it's near transit corridors, if it's mixed use, if it's satisfying many other community benefits. I implore you to take those opportunities and let's figure out how to support those developments. And if there's things in the way between the codes that might be outdated here in town, you're not the only ones. Santa Cruz, Hollister, Salinas, everybody's dealing with very similar issues. Let's coordinate to make sure that we get the best practices on the table. I want to highlight a couple things too that's happening. The housing package that was passed last year, historic for dollars that is actually going to get dialed in from the state, much more. $4 billion is going to be on the ballot, actually $6 billion. There's $4 billion from Prop 1, $2 billion from Prop 2. Implore you to learn more about those. Actually, if you would be so courageous to actually endorse both, or at least Proposition 1 especially, because those are the dollars that are going to move projects forward, like the ones that you see here with the senior housing at Van Buren, that requires subsidy that is going to be unlocked from the $4 billion Prop 1 bond, and it's pulling really well, but it needs folks to turn out. We have to understand what's in it. We have to understand what the dollars are for. Finally, I want to say, again, as a partner, MBEP is here to help on a number of different levels. We have a housing trust fund that we can support for new projects. A $12 million pot of funds here regionally that's available. We also have a policy paper with 9 recommendations for realistic policies that jurisdictions such as yourselves can take up, whether we're talking about additional ADA, accessory dwelling unit development opportunities, or bonus density on top of the existing bonus density, enhanced density bonus provisions. Actually, Santa Cruz is one of the first jurisdictions that's taking that up, so we can certainly help with those kinds of policies as well. We look forward to working with you all. Thank you for having us on the agenda this evening.
Okay. Thanks, Mr. Huerta. we appreciate your work as well. Okay. Now, if y'all, come on, if you want to make a little line that would help move our meeting along and give us an idea of our timing. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor, council members, community members. My name is Rafael Hernandez. I'm the Housing Program Associate for the Monterey Bay Economic Partnership. I work with Matt Huerta. I reiterate what he said, and I'm here to support the city's implementation of its policies regarding affordable housing and improving the quality of life for all of its residents. I am a graduate of the Middlebury Institute of International Studies, also known as MISS. I went there when it was called simply the Monterey Institute. And as a grad student there, as you may know, or most likely know, we go there, spend our time, and then we're off to work on issues internationally. So it's a quick couple-year stop, learn, and go, either to Washington, D.C. or someplace around the world. And as a MISS student, one works with stakeholders in different regions of the globe to engage in challenges, among others, education, geopolitics, socioeconomics, hunger, healthcare, and housing. In my time at MISS, at Middlebury Institute, I was able to travel to many countries through their different research programs, including Peru, Cuba, Rwanda, Japan, China. And in my time there, I also had the honor and privilege to offer consulting services to government entities in different countries. And as I went around the world looking for the place where I could contribute my skills, my convictions, and my desire to help improve things, I came back here and I realized this is where all those issues I've been working on are. All my world travels brought me back here. Now my travels take me to Seaside, Pacific Grove, Marina, Salinas, Greenfield, Gonzales, and Monterey. So, in closing, I just want to say that we have opportunities to help folks. We have opportunities to help the people that work here, the people who clean, who fix, who teach, who nurse, who build, who harvest our cities. And I look forward to working with you all and helping everyone find housing. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for your comments. Welcome back, Mr. Williamson.
Good evening. My name is Tyler Williamson. And I just wanted to share my experience in regards to housing. I've been on both sides of the housing issue. I've been homeless before, and last year my partner and I, we were able to buy a home together in Monterey. And so having been on both sides of the experience, I feel that everybody in Monterey should have an opportunity to have those same opportunities. But what that looks like is the question. And so a lot of the things that have been brought up tonight, I will try not to repeat. But I would just start off by thanking the wonderful city staff for all the work that they do and just the recognition that they're kind of underfunded in a way and they're short-staffed. Having had conversations with them, one of the things that I understand is they would like to be able to apply for more grants, but their time is limited to managing the things that they're looking at. So if we could get additional staff, that would be great. If we can get additional funding towards housing needs, which obviously seems to be a priority for our city. I'm also on the Housing Advisory Committee for the county, and actually Karen O'Neill, coming up behind me here, she shared with me an ordinance from Alameda County that is to help give renters protections. And so it may not seem like much, but it requires, after certain standards are met, it would require the landlord to physically hand documents to the tenant, giving them their rights as far as mediation in regards to rent increases. And so that's something that we're looking at doing at the county level. And I would encourage us to look at the same thing for the city. I know it's going to be difficult for us to ramp up affordable housing needs for the people in our community, but if we can do something in the meantime to help protect renters, I think if we can bolster renters' rights, that would be a good step. In regards to the MBEP white paper, I would encourage folks to read through that. It's a 16-page document. It's definitely worth the read, and it gives really good recommendations as far as what we can do at the city level to make changes and make it easier for developers to come in and do their job, and not only to push for affordable housing, but to push for any housing development at all. We make it really difficult with our current policies, and there are certain things that we can do, like changing how we do the developer fees. And so I can speak to more of that with you all in a separate conversation. Also speaking to the ballot initiatives. So for us to be competitive, because I imagine that these ballot initiatives, these 6 billion, whatever that amount is, I imagine that these ballot initiatives will pass this November. And if we try to apply for those funds, and we're being competitive against another city or another municipality that's applying for those same funds, we're not really competitive because we don't have any matching funds. And so there's this discussion happening in the community about a potential ballot initiative in 2020 to do a bond measure for affordable housing in our region. So whether that's at a county level or something that we might want to look at more locally, I would just encourage folks to kind of look at that idea, because here's a big pot of money for us to be able to potentially tap into, and we're not going to be competitive. I'll try to wrap it up here. Speaking to the 3-story development that Esther was talking about over off of Fremont, I was at a neighborhood association meeting where a lot of folks from the neighborhood actually came out and spoke against that development. And, I'm not necessarily saying that project has to be the one that we push for, but I would just encourage folks to not only come out when you don't want something in your neighborhood, come out and help, because I hope you recognize that it is a problem. So don't just say, I don't want it here, but help kind of have a conversation about where can we meet our goals, because this needs to be done. I'll give a personal story and I'll wrap it up. So when my partner and I moved into our home on Franklin, our garage, you could tell there was an illegal bathroom there before. You can see all the pipes in the ground. And so we wanted to convert that into a studio and rent it out for maybe $1,000, something a little bit reasonable for somebody that needs an affordable space to live. But we came up against a whole bunch of barriers. Of course, water was an issue, water allocations, and then there was setback requirements. So if we can make it a little bit easier, I know ADUs has been something that we've been pushing, but if we can loosen things up a little bit more, I think that would be an easy way for us to be able to increase some density in the city. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Welcome.
Hi there,
Hi.
Karen O'Neill, and I'll make mine really short. I just have 2 points. One is, my background is 20 years construction in the area here. I worked with our company developing a lot of corridor housing in the early days, so there's a lot of interaction with city, county, state, and fed. And at any rate, I know a lot of developers in the area and outside the area who are now, because I think maybe Silicon Valley money, and they also have investors backing them who would like to come here and help us with our affordable housing situation. And one of the concerns that they have is the planning commission and the difficulties. And I just want to make you aware of that. I'm certainly happy to introduce you to some of these people and see if behind the scenes you can work something out. And have now forwarded one of those names to Hans this afternoon. And then my other issue is, again, another concern, Costa Hawkins, Prop 10, comes up on the ballot. Mark Stone seems to think that it won't pass. I think it might. I think there'll be a lot of individuals turning out that maybe aren't in depth on the issues and are going to vote to get rid of it. Therefore, in the city of Monterey, it's my understanding there is currently no ordinance protecting renters from egregious rental increases. I know I literally have hundreds of stories, which I've passed on to some of you already. People getting increases 2-3 times a year. anywhere from 50 to 200 to 500 to 600. The new Monterey building 2 months ago had a rental increase of $600 per month. So I think it's really time for the city and all of you to look at the situation, address it, and treat it accordingly in an effort to protect what we think is probably 63% of the citizens in the area. And time is pressing. The ballot is in November. That's it. Thank you.
All right, thanks. Hello.
Hi, my name is Christine Rizzo, and I don't have any real great wisdom to share. Much of what I'm going to say is going to be repeats of what other people have said, but I'm here in support of the Monterey Peninsula Renters United, but also as a lifelong Monterey resident, born here, raised here, went to Monterey High. I have really great concerns because I remember a time when, you know, teachers like me, or police officers, or people who had more lucrative careers, everybody lived in the same community, and there wasn't this traffic and commuting and having to live farther and farther away and commute back and forth to do your job in the community that you could no longer afford to live in. My children are college graduates. One's a doctor, one's a graphic designer. Neither one has resettled here. And it's really sad to me that kids can't afford to live in the community they grew up in. I think there's something wrong with that. And so that's really why I'm here. I appreciate the efforts that the city is doing, especially for first-time home buyers. I've been a homeowner, a renter, back to a rent, you know, owner, renter, back and forth. But I'll leave eventually because my kids aren't here. And that's what I see happening. And I think it's really sad, and it doesn't make for a nice community for everyone when we don't all live where we were. And that's kind of my 2 cents worth.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, council, staff, Dan Silveri, your partner from Monterey Hotel Apartments. Just a quick update. Next week, Councilman Smith and Barrett are going to come and visit us, and we're going to give them a little tour of how it's maturing. And I've got two new projects that are coming forward I'm working with your staff on right now. But just an update on the hotel apartments, the tenants that are there. We have 18 tenants, 100% occupied, with a waiting list that's probably bigger than that we'll probably never even be able to fill one because everybody's so happy that lives there. It's just unfortunate that we don't have more. But yeah, they're great tenants. Several single heads of households with children are in walking distance to their jobs. One across the street, one right next door. So it's, you know, it's a terrific project, and it's just very well received, and we have a great group. They pay their rent on time. They're good citizens. They're busy raising their families and taking care of the property and helping us as well. One of our tenants, and I'll leave her unnamed, she was going to have to leave the area. She has a master's degree, and but her pay is not real high, and she was suffering. We were fortunate to get to provide her with some housing, and also she's able to stay in the area. So it's fantastic. They're great stories. We have two new projects that were brought before the staff, and one is the Franklin Street, Franklin and Cortez. I own an auto repair facility there. I was trying to put some housing on top of it to protect my rent for my two tenants that there, and we can't do it. It just won't work. It's too much noise for the housing, and so it won't work. So I'm proposing that we would like to put 16 units in there, and we can do a split, 50% affordable and 50% market rate. And it'll be a really good looking building. But as some of the other folks have spoken here, I wanted to be a little later person speaking because I wanted to hear other people's comments. But the need for the density is important. The height restriction, we need some help with that. I think overall site, we're okay. It'll be a great looking building. I'm going to share that with Councilman Smith and Barrett next week and let them see that. But it's a really good looking building. It'll serve a great purpose down there, and it's very well needed. The other project is 15 city manager, Huntsler, is, we showed it to him a couple of months ago, and it's the Pacific Street Calle Principal parking garage. We think we can design a building on top of the garage, protect the parking, and we'll need to go up 4 stories with that. We haven't gotten into it with the engineers yet, but we're working on that right now. I met with the superintendent of schools, Dr. Diefenbaugh, probably 2 months ago, and he's got a terrible problem with trying to retain teachers. And he said, you know, he told me a story about a young couple, both teachers that were going to come up here from Los Angeles. He was really excited to interview them and thought that, boy, this is going to be a real big help for him. Very well qualified teachers. And just before they were getting ready to come, the day before, they canceled. They said, we can't come up there because we can't make it on the pay that we make and afford the housing. It's just too tough for us. We can't do it. He also told me he doesn't have any money for housing. So there's a lot of work to do with that. I'm hoping that the election coming up in November will provide some funding, but we're going to need some funding somehow, and hopefully we get to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Thanks for the update on the apartments. Welcome to our meeting.
Hi. I've actually never been to a city council meeting before, and I never thought I ever would be. There's a lot of things that I never thought I would be doing, like facing the housing crisis here. So I thought I would just give you a brief part of my story, because putting a face to it I think is important, especially for someone who is kind of stuck in the middle between not low income and not wealthy. I can't afford to buy a house, and I now can't afford to rent. I came here about 15 years ago. My partner and I rented a 3-bedroom house in New Monterey, and we both worked from home at the time, so we had a room and 2 offices. We're both white-collar professionals with middle income wages, so we thought, we could make it here. Last year, our rent was raised by 25% without any warning. I started looking online and finding hundreds of other stories from renters like myself who also were struggling to pay the rent for the first time in their lives. My partner will be leaving at the end of the month, which puts me in a difficult position. I'm currently having trouble finding a 1-bedroom or 2-bedroom house for an affordable rent, which would be a third of my income, or qualify for minimum rents because they ask for 3 times the rental price. So I'm looking at either having to find a roommate for the first time in my life at my age, which I think is completely ridiculous, inviting a stranger to share my house, which is something I'm not looking forward to. I'm looking at placing all of my personal belongings, everything I own, into storage and trying to find a room to rent at my age again, which I haven't done since college, or leaving the area, going back to the Midwest. I applaud people who are trying to create affordable units. Right now, I feel like there's not enough being done to stop the escalation of the rent prices that are pushing out the middle class residents who feel betrayed by our city and replaced by the wealthy Silicon Valley vacation home owners and the investors. I thought I would be able to make it here. I thought I would be able to stay here. I love it here. This is my home. My grandmother, who's 98 years old, lives here, and I want to be with her until she passes because I'm a caregiver for her. And that's my story, and I just felt like sharing it.
Yeah, thanks for being here.
I'm sorry, what's your name?
Noel.
Noel.
Hi, my name is John Tilley. I'm the president of the Monterey Commercial Property Owners Association.
I just want to say that when it comes to rent control, a lot of communities have approached it and have learned lessons. There's pros and cons to it. There's just pros and cons to it. And I would offer also that if there is a desire for public forums, for bringing groups together to discuss this really critical and important topic of affordability of a home for people, the Monterey Commercial Property Owners would be happy to host such a forum so that people can have a chance to get together and talk about it. Thank you very much.
Mr. Tilley, how can people get in touch with you then? Website?
For any particular purpose?
Well,
through the Monterey Commercial Property Owners Association. There is a website for our organization. They call
There'll be
it.
contacts on your website.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Because I'm thinking people will probably take you up on that nice offer.
Some people already have. We've had people who have been reaching out to us, and it's something that is going to be discussed amongst yourselves and amongst the community. It needs to be discussed, and we'd like to facilitate and be part of that discussion as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Do we have anyone else who'd like to speak this evening? Okay, again, we thank you for your passion and your caring very much. Council shares that. Any council comments? There's no action to be taken, but a comment or two from council. Then you want to start us off, please? Councilmember Timothy.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Okay.
We heard from Noelle, who said she never expected to be speaking in front of the city council. And frankly, I never expected to be a city council member. What drove me to run for city council was the distress that I was witnessing in my community in regard to the same issues that you were here talking about. I resonate very strongly, and in fact, I've experienced personally many of the hardships that you're all describing. And I would invite you to listen to my campaign materials. I have interviews and materials that are online from when I ran for office in 2004, which is essentially saying many of the same things you're saying today in terms of being a community that's capable of regenerating itself, with working families, with children that can afford housing, that have jobs where they can afford to live here. And I would invite you, any of you, to contact me directly, and I'll give you my personal phone number. It's 831-277-9505. You can contact me via email. I'll give you my personal email. It's timothylbarrett@hotmail.com. And I'll enjoy to speak with you about these issues and share with you some of the progress and the challenges we've made along the way. So in regard to the issue of housing, I made my first year on city council about housing. I convened two separate groups. I hadn't seen any of you in the audience at that time. We had a group comprised of people who were members of church congregations, social workers, homeless advocates in one group. In another group, we had commercial property owners, business owners, developers, meeting separately. And I posed the same question to both of these groups. The question I would pose to the homeless advocates and the church congregation members was, how can we get more housing for homeless? And the question I posed to the commercial property owners and the developers was, how can we get more workforce housing? And we met these two separate groups separately over a period of weeks. And it was very interesting that both groups came up with similar ideas on how to address those issues. And we were able to form a coalition between those two groups that usually aren't talking to each other and come up with a series of recommendations to implement into the housing element revision. And they, with my support, brought that to the Planning Commission, and it actually passed Planning Commission to be added into the housing element as a revision, but didn't survive the test of time because it was turned back at the level of the council. So all that is to say that I understand these issues, and I'm not new to them, and they are pertinent and relevant to me. We have initiated a new nonprofit called the Neighborhood Housing Fund for Monterey. And I've heard it suggested that maybe this is something that I just came to recently. But before running for city council, I was talking to people in the community about a community development fund that could be put forward towards purposes identified within the community by the community. Moving forward, it was one of the first topics that I spoke to with our former city manager, was about his community development fund. Last year, we brought the Community Capital Conference to the city of Monterey, and that conference exhibited some of the benefits that you can have from a community development fund, and they showed some of the building blocks of how you build it. So this year, we actually have a community development fund in the form of the Neighborhood Housing Fund for Monterey. And it's essentially, like a community development fund, it's for community to invest back into community in the needs that the community finds that need to be addressed. So like many nonprofits, and this is an actual 501c3 public benefit corporation, it's for real, it's a real project. Like many nonprofits, they start out with a vision, and then they grow that vision. And we have vision, we have need, and we have community, and to me, that means we have all the building blocks of success. So as we move forward, I'm hoping that we can come together as community to find ways to pull together, and this Community Neighborhood Housing Fund for Monterey is one of the constructs that I invite community to harness in order to be able to move forward on some of these issues. And one of the unique aspects about the Neighborhood Housing Fund for Monterey is that it's not top-down. It's bottom-up and seeks to engage with our community's well-defined neighborhood associations to find the particular characteristics of a neighborhood, what that neighborhood identifies as need, and develop ways to move forward together rather than separately. So it's an initiative that I hope will bear fruit, and it depends on community involvement to make that happen. But I'm confident.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. First, I'd like to thank everyone for being here tonight. I think that the only way you can solve a housing problem is everybody together as a team, getting your community together to make sure that we have enough housing for not only my family, but everybody's family, so they can live on the peninsula. A couple of things I'd like to say. First is I'd like to thank former and community leaders and city leaders for us having 500 units available to people in the city, that are city-owned. And I think one of the reasons that they did that is because they saw at the time a need and a priority to put funding, city funding, towards purchasing, or at least looking at getting these units within the city's housings. Yeah, thank you. So maybe it's time for the city to start looking at funding to continue doing that. I think that's probably important, that there's a priority there. The second thing is, I hear many years ago, I'm sure you were here, Hans, but that at one time there was a real renters increase issue. And that, if I remember straight, there was like a volunteer renters guidelines that the city passed. So was I correct about that?
Yes, and that was about 2000, 2001, and it played out in the now Fremont neighborhood where I believe a new property owner purchased an apartment complex and started increasing rent. At that time, the city, as well as the variety of property owners and property management companies, came together and created, in response to that behavior, voluntary rental guidelines that basically outline for the landlords and for the property managers guidelines on how to and when to increase rents it also, if I remember correctly, includes clauses for, at that time, I think it was the Monterey College of Law to mediate rental disputes. That was done, I believe, in 2001 and was in response to, if I say predatory rent increases, it might be a too strong term, but that was in response to that.
Thank you. And then the last, thank you for that. And then the last comment I want to make is, again, the problem with housing is water and enough land to build what you need for the housing units. We have property in Fort Worth. We have 125 acres. And again, I think we should make that a priority to look into that property to see what we can do to put some type of affordable housing or something that we can do to help people.
So I think I have 3 points. This is just an idea to throw out there for the council and mayor to think about, but I'm wondering if it wouldn't be a good idea for us to have a joint meeting of the planning commission and the city council to talk about some of these things, and in particular maybe to go over some of the ideas raised by MVEP's white paper. So I don't know all of the rationale for why different projects have been disapproved by them, but I think it'd be good for us to collectively have a conversation. So that'd be one idea. I also second Councilmember Albert's interest in looking at our Fort Ord property. And right now it's zoned for light industrial. But I think, again, we need to have a conversation. Is that really the best use, or do we have a greater need for housing? And then I looked into some of the laws, state laws regarding rental protection, and there are actually quite a few and pretty extensive. But what I don't think is maybe always the case, maybe that renters don't even always know what their rights are. So I was pleased to hear about the idea of maybe having, you know, some mechanism to inform people what their rights are, because there are some state laws that are pretty darn good, but I don't think they're necessarily enforced, and I think we could do more to educate people about that. And yeah, and I also agree with Councilmember Albert that we need to make this a priority in our budgeting. Make sure we're going to have the money to match some of the state funds that become available.
Thank you.
Thank you. All good comments. Thank you for the public coming and giving their feeling and their thinking on their personal situations, and we can appreciate where you're coming from. I wanted to highlight a couple of things that are in the report tonight. It's agenda item 19, which we've heard a presentation from staff. And it outlines our housing goals and our policies, but I wanted to talk about some of these goals that are listed here. Some of you probably saw the brief agenda item, maybe in the newspaper, but didn't get an opportunity to read this. The goals of the city's general plan housing element include broadening the choice of rental housing types available to residents of Monterey in all price ranges and for all family sizes, while maintaining neighborhood compatibility where possible, using second units to encourage owner opportunities. Another goal is encourage maintenance and rehabilitation of the entire housing stock, and the city staff talked a little bit about that tonight. Goal F is remain sensitive to the needs of the elderly, single-parent headed households, the disabled, and the large families, and develop positive programs to assist the homeless. Encourage construction of housing units that provide for special needs. Provide housing that specifically meets the needs of the Monterey workforce. And I'm going to stop there. There's a lot of very appropriate goals that are outlined, so I would encourage everybody to read the staff work tonight. Mr. Albert mentioned one of the primary hurdles that we face is the lack of water. Monterey is constrained, obviously, with the hillside behind us, Carmel, Pacific Grove on one side, seaside and the ocean, and we have about 150 lots of record that don't have water. There are, from time to time, development opportunities that come up that come through ARC planning and sometimes come to the council if they're sticky. But invariably, the big thing that we hear all the time is we need the water to adequately increase the number of units in the density so that it pencils out. We hear that all the time. And what that means is if the cap rate isn't enough, you can't get a return and you don't have the money coming out of the project to be able to build the project. And if you don't have water, you can't get enough units. And if you don't have land, you see the dilemma. So land and water is the primary hurdle for local developers that can build 1, 2, 15, 16 or larger units. I had the privilege of remodeling my mother's house 30 years ago, and we took it down to the studs and had a low-income loan assistance program in Pacific Grove, and we put all the things in it to rebuild it. And you know, when you get lumber, it comes with a little sticker price, and I didn't pay much attention to it then. Well, last year, my son moved into the home, and it's time to freshen up and remodel a couple things, and we tore a wall down. And by looking at what was in the material, I came across a 2x4 that was marked $1.09. That's what that 2x4 cost me 30 years ago. And I bought more 2x4s locally, and guess what? It's not $1.09 anymore. So the building materials, and Dan's sitting back there, he knows the price of building materials. We have some inflationary factors that are really beyond the city of Monterey's control. So put together the cost of labor, the cost of building, water and land. If we have the opportunity to say yes, I think this council is in a position to say yes. We're looking for those projects, but we need to have folks be able to have the water and the land and the cost and the ability to push those units out. So we're always looking for good ideas. We're looking for ideas that fit. We're looking for ideas that are appropriate density levels because we do want to protect the quality of our neighborhoods and the quality of living in Monterey. That's why, after all, we all decide to live here in Monterey. So we're not about trying to make Monterey Boston or Detroit or New York and all those places, wonderful places. But whatever we do has got to be the appropriate size and fit for the city of Monterey, for our 9 little square miles, for our 28,000 people. And we know we need more units. We know we have people that have living conditions that they need relief and they need help. And we really implore, and I personally implore, the other cities to embrace the need for housing stock, mixed use. And the city of Monterey, for a long time, as Mr. Albert has mentioned, has been on a path to add units wherever possible, embrace mixed use, and embrace the opportunity for density where it fits. So I implore the other cities, Pacific Grove and Seaside and Sand City and all those around us to get on board and do the same thing. But there are frustrations among this council because we are limited by the city of Monterey is not the sole decider of what gets built and what doesn't get built. There are permit processes. I think our staff and our planning does take a judicious look at the appropriate planning through the laws that we have to follow and issue the permits. And when the permit gets issued, we get to see the buildings go up. That's exciting. We look forward to those opportunities. But it is private sector that primarily provides the housing stock. And the city of Monterey issues the permit, and the region has the water. So when those things come together, and I know Mr. Horta is shaking his head, private sector is the one that should be building units. The city of Monterey issues a permit and gets out of the way and lets them build it. So in partnership and opportunities and looking for new ideas, I think this council is ready and willing to look at new ideas and to not be in the way. And I don't think we're doing anything to get in the way. Encourage everybody to look at the housing goals that we agree with tonight and the report we've received. We have ongoing dialogue and discussion about all the necessary elements of housing, but let's get us some water so that we can start seeing some things get built throughout the peninsula and provide housing stock that we all need. But quality of life, quality of our neighborhoods, and dealing with some of the traffic congestions are certainly our high priorities. And we're going to hear more about congestion tonight. So That's all I wanted to say. Encourage those that have some water and land and motivation to build some units, bring them on. And Dan, thank you for all you're trying to do, and look forward to seeing you on Monday and see what exciting ideas you might have. And so we're looking forward to the grand opening of the 19 units on Van Buren, and we look forward to more of those opportunities as they present themselves in Monterey. Thank you for your time, and thanks for coming.
All right, very good. All right, again, so we can't let the conversation just come here and stop, so we look forward to continuing working with everybody. And so we will see you again and again and again, I hope. We have to do what we can do. We just can't do nothing. That's not an option. So with that, we'll go on to